So, just to start, Stop Killer Robots, it started about 12 years ago, and it was created mainly by Human Rights Watch, Article 36, and Amnesty International. And it's today a global coalition of over 270 NGOs, academics, youth, tech, and robotics specialists, who are all part of our coalition, and we're present in more than 70 countries around the world. So yeah, here you can read our mission. It's really we support the development of legal and other norms that ensure meaningful human control over the use of force, reduce automated harm, and counter digital dehumanization in autonomous weapons and other emerging technologies. Just to see what we mean by digital dehumanization, just like dehumanization in and of itself, it is this process where we're depriving a person or a group of person of positive human qualities, meaning that we don't no longer see them as human beings. In digital dehumanization, you reduce people to data, and that data becomes the basis for decisions that can negatively affect their lives. And we know that the use of data, and especially private data, is it for targeting purposes is extremely problematic. We know that the biases that exist in society are translated into algorithms and that create gender biases, discrimination, inequality, and thus disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And we see examples of digital dehumanizations that already exist in, for example, AI decision support systems, facial recognition, predictive policing. And at the extreme end of digital dehumanization for Stop Killer Robots is autonomous weapon systems, where a person is killed on the basis of their data or harmed on the basis of their data through a machine. And so you remove the human element on both sides. And of course, the question of the data also creates a lot of questions in terms of how is the data collected? Where is the data stored? How is the data used to train a model? Who is labeling the data and under which conditions? I won't go too much into the definition of autonomous weapon system because I think Professor Olgan already touched upon it quite extensively. But for us, it's a system that once activated can select and apply force without human intervention. And this means that after the initial launch by the person, it's the machine that will decide what to strike or who to kill, and the human operator no longer knows when or where the attack will take place. And that's quite a worrying trend in the sense that it raises all sorts of ethical, legal, accountability, humanitarian, and security challenges. And like Professor Olgan said, we, from a campaign's perspective, also don't use the words lethal autonomous weapons and just use autonomous weapon systems. So what the campaign is calling for is a legally binding instrument, one that prohibits autonomous weapon systems that do not allow for meaningful human control or that are unpredictable, prohibits autonomous weapon systems that can target people, and regulate all other weapon systems. And it's very much aligned also with the position of the International Committee of the Red Cross, or the ICRC, and it's called within the framework of the CCW, this two-tier approach that has both prohibitions and regulations. I'll now look a bit into where we stand at the political level. So, as already mentioned, the discussions within the CCW have been ongoing for a while, since 2017. There have since been, a lot of regional discussions. Costa Rica hosted a regional conference back in 2023, which led to the Belém Communiqué. There's been also, in September 2023, a CARICOM declaration. There's been regional conferences organized in Luxembourg, in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Philippines, in Sierra Leone, and the last one was in Austria in April of 2024. And in November of 2023, the CCW adopted a 3-year mandate to define a set of elements of an instrument. And we're exactly in this phase now, where we can move to the next slide, please. That's exactly the phase we are currently in, where we have elements of an instrument through a rolling text that is led by the Dutch chair of the CCW. And that really helps to look at the characterization, as Professor Olgan mentioned, but also like affirms that IHL applies, what it means meaningful human control, and like the compatibility with IHL throughout the whole life cycle of Oz. And that really focused the discussions. And in September of this year, Brazil delivered a joint statement on behalf of 42 states saying that they were ready to negotiate on the basis of these elements. And so that's quite a significant step forward, because that means that there is consensus on that, the work of the CCW has been completed, the mandate has been completed, and that we now have a set of elements that we could move forward in negotiations of an instrument. And this statement was then reopened more recently at the meeting of high contracting parties and turned into a working paper where 46 states joined to show their support and say that they were ready to launch negotiations. And so the next 12 months are really critical, because in November of 2026 is the review conference of the CCW. And what we, as a coalition, would like to see is that there is a negotiation mandate, hopefully a short one, maybe one or 2 years, and that then there's all the elements are discussed, and that we can then have a treaty. The importance here is also the selection and then the General Assembly in parallel to what is happening in Geneva. So most of the discussions is happening in Geneva, but then also in New York, there's within the framework of the UN General Assembly, there's also discussions ongoing on autonomous weapon systems. And in May of this year, there was the first time that there was 2 days of informal consultations specifically dedicated to autonomous weapon systems within the framework of the UNGA. And that allowed to cover quite a number of elements. It highlighted the work done within the framework of the CCW, but also broadened it out to human rights elements, humanitarian concerns, the security concerns, and the ethical concerns as well. And also during the high-level week in September of 2025, many states also expressed their support for regulation, and the UN Secretary General, as you can see in the picture, also reiterated the need for a legally binding instrument. Yeah, and so in terms of, I think in more broadly, the vast majority of states want a legally binding instrument. Over 130 states have expressed that they do want a legally binding instrument, and the technology is evolving quite quickly. And so for the campaign, we really want to make sure that these next 12 months, there is broad consensus from states on the elements of a treaty, that there is confidence building amongst them, and that they can move to negotiations. One of the concerns that we have with the CCW, and although we acknowledge that a lot of progress has been made, is that it focuses very much on armed conflict and on IHL. And for the campaign, we do believe that these weapon systems could also be used in other contexts, such as law enforcement operations and border control, and that the human rights elements, therefore, are also important. Next slide. So as I was mentioning previously, well, the vast majority of countries do want a new instrument on autonomous weapon systems. There's about 50 states that haven't really positioned themselves, and then there's about 12 states, which I've put here, who so far have not been in favor of regulating these instruments. And you can see which one they are. Some of them, it's because they believe that IHL is enough, is sufficient, and they don't want to have they don't see the need for an additional instrument. Others is because they believe that regulating hampers the technological progress. And so there's a variety of reasons why countries yeah, oppose a legally binding instrument. Others would want an instrument, but not necessarily a legally binding one. So there's a whole range of different state positions there. But also we have to be cognizant, obviously, that the technology is evolving and also of the current geopolitical landscape, which is evolving. And in a way, it also creates an opportunity for states to make to change their positions and to create new alliances as well. And so as we move forward in building the capacity of states and building this confidence, the coalition will really work at the national level, the regional level, and the multilateral level. And for us, it's really important that we engage with members of parliament, that we engage with ministries of foreign affairs, but also with ministries of defense to hear their positions more clearly on the use of these technologies in warfare. And all of this, could happen within the CCW, but of course there is the problem that it's a forum where there is a consensus forum also, or it could happen within the UN General Assembly. We don't have a preference. The idea is really that we push for an internationally legally binding instrument. And so while that's still our priority of the campaign is to reach a treaty, we also want to engage more with tech companies, with the financial institutions, with other actors of influence to raise awareness about the concerns around autonomous weapon systems and also for just the general public to be more aware.